Hey guys, it's Danny. Now, since I'm trying out different vendors to see the transport time of orchids to my country, I try to go for orchids that I know will handle long transports. So today I'm gonna talk about 5 of the most drought-tolerant orchids that I know of, in case you will ever want to order an orchid you know will have a long transport time, or you're just not that good with watering time. On the 5th place, we have a little bit of a cheat. This is the Catasetum orchid, and I say it's a cheat because he's not always drought tolerant. This is a deciduous orchid and it loses all of its leaves after blooming time, usually in the winter. When all the leaves are gone, this orchid is dormant, and in its dormancy, it doesn't need water at all. Now, dormancy time can vary from a few weeks to a few months depending on what Catasetum type you have. However, when the vegetative period starts, it needs tremendous amounts of water. So in the case of the Catasetum, if you're thinking of purchasing him while he is dormant, it's the best time to do so, because this orchid can even spend 1 month in transport and he could not be bothered with anything. So for this reason, he is on the 5th place, because as much as he doesn't need water in its dormancy, he needs tremendous amounts of water while he's growing. But aren't those blooms spectacular? It's all worth it, trust me. In the 4th position, we have the Dendrobium kingianum and his hybrid, the Dendrobium Berry Oda, which can sometimes be sold as the kingianum. Now, this orchid is really not a fussy orchid, and when it comes to watering, it really doesn't need to stay moist all the time, not even in the growing period. I kept this orchid in quite coarse medium and didn't water it way too frequently. And to my surprise, the canes didn't shrivel all that much, and whenever I had it without roots, it bounced back really fast. Now, during wintertime, this orchid should be watered minimally. Of course, in the summertime, you should keep this orchid hydrated, but it's one of those orchids which prefers to be on the dry side rather than moist all the time. So for this reason, I believe it's a good purchase if you know the transport will be long, as well as it's a good plant to have if you cannot water often. In 3rd place, we have the Vanda Orchid, which is notorious for liking warm climates and not having sogginess around its roots all the time. This orchid is really drought tolerant. I've never had any issues with it on transport. Also, until now I've kept it bare rooted and I watered it once a day, and I had great success with it. So this orchid is perfect for those environments which are pretty warm or pretty dry, and if you actually pot this orchid in a loose medium, you can water as infrequent as once a week. Up until now, I did have good success with this orchid kept hanging and also potted, but because it doesn't like too much moisture around its roots, you need to be very careful what type of medium you're using, and of course, your pot needs to be ventilated. Maybe a basket will be great. But overall, a Vanda orchid is a very safe purchase if you know transport will be long, and also a great plant to have if you live in a dry environment. However, don't go to the extreme with not watering this orchid. It is indeed drought tolerant, but it still needs hydration. The second orchid in the top is the Neofinetia falcata. It is kind of related to Vandas, and it also suffered a change of name, but I personally will never call it a Vanda, because of all the tradition around it. However, this orchid is more drought tolerant than a Vanda orchid. It can be grown in pots more easy than a Vanda orchid, and for this reason, it can be watered less frequent. This type of orchid requires a lot of ventilation in its medium, and it doesn't like to stay soggy wet all the time. It is actually recommended that you keep your Neofinetia more on the dry side than the wet side. Now, in winter time, I barely watered my Neofinetia, because in winter they do seem to grow slower and take a little bit of a break from growing. I think I actually watered it once a month or so, and it had absolutely no trouble with that. In the summertime, again, I really didn't have to hassle with keeping her hydrated all the time. If she stayed 5 days in totally dry medium, she would have no problem with it. So for all of these reasons, she is my number 2 pick. And I do think this orchid does much better if you don't water it way too often, like an Oncidium for example. And the number 1 most drought-tolerant orchid is the Cattleya orchid, and I chose it on number 1 because, oh, she's just too pretty and so worth having. Again, this orchid doesn't like to stay soggy wet all the time and actually does a lot better if she has a lot of ventilation around the root system. A very well-established Cattleya can stay bone dry for a lot of days without showing signs of dehydration. Also, she's very suited for long transport times. Now, of course, extreme drought periods can dehydrate this orchid, but the good news is that this orchid is really hardy and usually bounces back pretty fast if she does have enough pseudobulbs. And I think I'll cheat once again in this top and add one more orchid which is very drought tolerant, but it is related to the Cattleya orchid, and this is the Brassavola. Just like the Cattleya, she is absolutely drought tolerant and generally will do better in a very ventilated medium or even mounted. Because they have such beautiful blooms and you can grow them in multiple types of setups, the Cattleya and Brassavola orchids are my #1 pick when I want to have an orchid which doesn't fuss too much if I forget to water it. And also for my delivery time tests, I'll definitely try to go first for a Cattleya or a Brassavola. Now keep in mind that all of these orchids, as drought tolerant as they are, they cannot withstand extremes, so if you forget to water for a whole month, these orchids will suffer as well. And also if you have a sick orchid pertaining to these species or a seedling, things are a little bit different. However, a very well established orchid and a healthy orchid should be very tolerant to a lot of abuse. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in a comment below if you agree to this top or if you have other suggestions for very drought tolerant orchids. If you'd like to see more orchid videos from me, simply subscribe to my channel. I post on a daily basis, and also feel free to leave me other suggestions for tops or topics for videos. You can send me a letter anytime at the address you see on the screen or in the description below. If you click on the left side of your screen, you're gonna be directed to orchidnature.com, where you'll find care sheets, identification sheets, and also you can talk to us in the forum section. And on the right side of your screen, you can click to watch another orchid video. Thanks for watching, I'll see you all next time. Bye!